Imagine this. You buy a popular ETF that says it follows a familiar index. The benchmark finishes the year up 10%. You open your brokerage account expecting something close to that. But your ETF shows 9.2%. Then you check the expense ratio, and it was only 0.05%. So the uncomfortable question is, where did the rest of the gap come from? That gap does not automatically mean somebody took your money. It does not automatically mean the fund is bad, but it does mean one thing. The ETF label did not do the job for you. You have to check whether the fund actually delivered the benchmark exposure you thought you were buying. That is the quiet danger behind tracking error. The fund may not be obviously broken. It may simply drift, lag, wobble, or cost you more in the real world than the benchmark headline suggests. Welcome to Grow with Tony. Simple money lessons for education only, not financial advice. By the end of this video, you will know how to diagnose an ETF with 2 scoreboards and a 5-check audit. Here is my simple rule for this video. Do not ask only, what does this ETF own? Ask, what job did this ETF promise to do, and how closely has it actually done that job? Because an index ETF is not supposed to be a magic object. It is supposed to be a delivery vehicle. If the benchmark is the route, the ETF is the car. The question is not whether the car has a nice paint color. The question is whether it stays on the road you hired it to follow. Most investors do not check this. And honestly, I understand why. ETFs are marketed as simple. You see the ticker, the benchmark, the fee, maybe a 1-year chart, and it feels like the work is done. If it says S&P 500, total market, international dividend, bond aggregate, or some other familiar label, your brain wants to treat the label as the answer. But the label is only the job description. It tells you what the fund is trying to do. It does not prove how well the fund delivered. This is where tracking error matters. But before we use that phrase, we need to separate 3 ideas that investors often mix together. The first idea is tracking difference. The second is tracking error. The third is trading friction, things like premiums, discounts, and bid-ask spreads. They are connected, but they are not the same thing. If you mix them together, you can blame the wrong problem and miss the real one. Start with tracking difference. This is the simplest scoreboard. It asks, over a period of time, how far was the ETF return from the benchmark return? For example, imagine the benchmark returned 10% over a year. If the ETF returned 9.2% over that same year, the tracking difference is minus 0.8 percentage points. In plain English, the ETF delivered less than the index it was trying to follow. That does not automatically mean the fund is bad. A real fund has costs. An index is a calculation. The index does not pay management fees. It does not have to trade real shares. It does not hold cash for redemptions. It does not deal with taxes in the same way a real fund might. So some gap can be normal. In many plain index funds, you might expect the ETF to trail the benchmark by something close to the real cost of running and trading the fund. But the important word is expect. If the fund keeps lagging by much more than its cost would suggest, or if the gap changes in a way you cannot explain, that is when the ETF may be quietly failing its job. This is where a low expense ratio can become a trap in your thinking. A low fee is good. I like low costs. But the fee is not the entire cost of owning the exposure. Imagine 2 ETFs that both say they follow the same broad index. Fund A charges a little more on paper, but it has tight tracking and the actual long-term gap from the benchmark is small and stable. Fund B looks cheaper on the fee table, but it consistently loses more to implementation, trading costs, or unstable tracking. In that case, the cheaper-looking fund may not be cheaper in the experience that matters. The investor does not spend the expense ratio. The investor lives with the fund's delivered return after all the real-world frictions have passed through the portfolio. The expense ratio is the sticker on the box. Tracking difference is closer to the receipt after the fund has actually done the work. And this is not just a nerdy decimal problem. Small annual gaps can compound into real money. Imagine a simple hypothetical. You invest $100,000 into 2 ETFs that are supposed to track the same benchmark. Fund A delivers 8% per year after all fund-level frictions. Fund B delivers 7.5% per year because its real-world tracking gap is 0.5% worse each year. After 25 years, Fund A grows to roughly $685,000. Fund B grows to roughly $610,000. That is about a $75,000 difference. That is not a forecast. It is not a guarantee. It is just the arithmetic of small annual drags when they compound for decades. This is why tracking is not finance trivia. It is leak detection. But now we need to be precise. That 0.5% annual drag is a tracking difference. Tracking error is the second scoreboard. Now the second scoreboard is tracking error. This phrase gets used casually, but the more precise meaning is about consistency. Tracking difference asks, how big was the gap? Tracking error asks, how much did that gap wobble over time? A fund could have a small average difference from the benchmark but still bounce around that benchmark in a way that is unstable. Another fund could have a slightly bigger average drag but track more consistently. That difference matters because investors do not only own averages. They own the fund through actual market days, rebalances, tax events, cash flows, and volatile periods. Think of two students taking the same class. One student scores 89, 90, 91, 90, 89. Another scores 75, 105, 82, 101, 87. Maybe their average is not wildly different, but the second student is much less predictable. That is the spirit of tracking error. It is the wobble around the benchmark. And here is the mental shift I want you to remember. The benchmark is the job description. Tracking is the performance review. If an ETF says it tracks an index, the index is not just a marketing name. It is the standard you use to judge whether the fund did what it said it would do. This does not mean the lowest tracking error always wins. That would be too simple. If you care about long-term total return, the average gap may matter more than short-term wobble. If you trade often, use the ETF for a precise allocation. Or hold something more complex, consistency may matter more. The point is not to worship one number. The point is to know which number answers which question. Tracking difference answers, what did this cost me or add to me versus the benchmark over this period? Tracking error answers, how reliable was the tracking along the way? Now let us be fair to ETF managers. Perfect tracking is not realistic. And when beginners expect perfection, they can misunderstand normal fund behavior. This is also why tracking should not be checked like a daily panic signal. A one-day gap may come from timing, foreign market hours, dividend accruals, or pricing differences. The useful question is whether the pattern over time fits the fund's stated strategy. For a normal long-term investor, the goal is not to stare at tracking data every morning. The goal is to avoid owning a fund whose quiet delivery problem only becomes obvious after years of trust. A benchmark is a model. It can assume clean prices, clean rebalancing, and clean index rules. A fund is a real portfolio. It has to buy and sell securities in real markets. That means tracking gaps can come from fees, they can come from transaction costs, they can come from cash drag if the fund holds some cash. They can come from sampling, where the ETF does not hold every single security in the index, but holds a representative basket. They can come from rebalancing. When the index changes, the fund has to implement those changes. That can involve timing, spreads, market impact, and costs. They can come from taxes, especially for funds holding international securities or securities with different withholding tax treatment. They can come from fair value pricing, especially when foreign markets close before the ETF market closes. They can even come from securities lending that can sometimes help offset costs, but it is still part of the fund's real-world implementation. This also means you should not automatically celebrate if a passive ETF beats the benchmark by a little. Sometimes that positive gap may be explainable, for example through securities lending revenue or other implementation details. The point is not to panic when the number is positive or negative. The point is to ask whether the result makes sense for the fund's stated job. So the goal is not to say any gap is a disaster. The better question is, does this gap make sense for the asset class, strategy, cost, and benchmark? A broad liquid U.S. stock index ETF should usually be easier to track than a narrow, less liquid international bond, commodity, or complicated strategy. Different jobs have different tracking difficulty. This is why comparing two ETFs only by the headline benchmark can be misleading. Two funds may say they track the same index, but one may use full replication, another may use sampling. One may have better trading execution, and another may have wider trading frictions. The benchmark name gets you into the right neighborhood. It does not finish the due diligence. Now let us separate tracking from trading friction, because this is where many investors get tangled. An ETF has a net asset value, or NAV, which is the value of the fund's underlying portfolio per share. But when you buy or sell an ETF during the trading day, you trade at a market price. That market price can be slightly above NAV, which is a premium, or slightly below NAV, which is a discount. In normal, liquid markets, ETF structure and arbitrage usually help keep market price close to NAV, but close does not mean identical every second. You also face the bid-ask spread. The bid is what buyers are willing to pay. The ask is what sellers are willing to accept. If you buy at the ask and immediately sell at the bid, the spread is a cost. This is not the same thing as tracking error. A fund can track its index very well at the portfolio level, while you still get a worse personal result because you bought at a premium, sold at a discount, or crossed a wide spread. So when you ask, is this ETF quietly failing, you need to check both layers. Layer 1 is the fund job. Did the ETF track its benchmark well? Layer 2 is your trading experience. Did the market price, spread, premium or discount make your actual entry and exit worse? This is why regulators tell investors to look beyond the ticker. ETF websites often show NAV, closing market price, premium or discount data, portfolio holdings, median bid-ask spread, and historical premium or discount information. That information is not decorative. It is part of the inspection. Now let us turn this into a simple ETF job audit. Check 1. What exact benchmark is this ETF supposed to track? Not just the market, not just dividend stocks, not just international. What is the actual index, and what does that index include or exclude? If you cannot explain the benchmark in one sentence, you may not know the job you hired the ETF to do. Check 2. What is the tracking difference over 1, 3, and 5 years when that data is available? If the fund is new and does not have a long history yet, that does not automatically make it bad. It simply means you have less evidence. In that case, the benchmark, issuer process, spread, holdings, and strategy description become more important because the performance review is still young. Do not look only at whether the ETF made money. Markets going up can hide bad tracking. Markets going down can make a good ETF look bad. The fair question is how it performed relative to the benchmark it promised to follow. If the ETF consistently trails by roughly explainable costs, that may be acceptable. If it trails by much more, ask why. Check 3. How stable is the tracking error? If the fund is supposed to give boring, precise index exposure, then high wobble around the benchmark is a warning sign. If the strategy is more complex, some wobble may be part of the job. But either way, you should know, invisible wobble is still wobble. Check 4. What do the premiums, discounts, and bid-ask spreads look like? This matters more if you trade frequently, use market orders, buy near the open or close, or buy ETFs with less liquid underlying holdings. A long-term investor may not care about a tiny spread on a very liquid ETF, but on a thin or specialized ETF, trading friction can quietly eat into the advantage you thought you were getting. Check 5. Does the replication method match your expectations? Some funds fully replicate an index. Some use sampling or optimization. Some hold derivatives. Some hold a subset of securities. Some track indexes that are themselves complex. None of that automatically means bad. But it does mean you should not stop at the name. The fund's prospectus and website can tell you how it tries to achieve its objective. Here is a simple sentence test. I own this ETF because it tracks this benchmark, using this method, with this level of cost and tracking quality. If you cannot finish that sentence, you may be trusting the label more than the evidence. Now, what should actually worry you? First, persistent lag that is much larger than expected costs with no clear explanation. Second, tracking that becomes unstable exactly when you most need the exposure to behave as expected. Third, Trading frictions that are large enough to matter for your holding period. A spread that barely matters for a 10-year investor might matter a lot for someone moving money often. Fourth, a benchmark or strategy you cannot understand. If the ETF's job description is foggy, the performance review will be foggy too. And fifth, comparing funds that do not actually have the same job. A fund tracking one index is not automatically better or worse than a fund tracking a different index just because the tracking number looks cleaner. Different tracks produce different races. This is where I think investors get trapped. They want one master number, one fee, one return, one chart, one winner. But ETF quality is not one number. It is a match between the job, the method, the cost, and the delivery. So the next time you look at an ETF, do not only ask, is this cheap? Ask, is this reliable at the job I need it to do? A good ETF is not just cheap. It is clear about its job, honest about its method, and reliable enough that you can trust the exposure you are buying. And if an ETF cannot pass that simple audit, it might not be exploding, it might not be making headlines, it might simply be quietly failing its job. If this helped, comment which ETF metric you usually check first: expense ratio, benchmark, tracking difference, tracking error, or bid-ask spread. And subscribe for more simple investing lessons from Grow with Tony. Keep learning, keep checking the details, and keep growing your wealth with patience.